We are in a golden age of exploration, but we're also in a dark age of destruction. We are discovering more species than at any other time in human history, but we are also destroying more species than at any other time in human history. Experts are saying that at the moment, we may be losing up to 30,000 species a year. That's about 100 every single day. And if trends continue, we could be losing up to 200 to 300,000 species every year in the next few decades. We are on the brink, I'm afraid, of a mass extinction crisis on a level unseen since the destruction of species with the dinosaurs. But I'm not here to beat you up. This is something hopefully you can do yourselves. This is the Imagine Solutions Conference. So I'm going to present to you, hopefully, a solution, because I believe that exploration is the basis of all our progression. It always has been, and it always will be. And I'm going to present to you 10 easy little steps, hopefully, to take you in for a nice cup of tea about how we can all become explorers. And if we can all become explorers, then hopefully we can get out of this mess that we're all in right now. So step one is we've all got to admit that we are explorers. Now, it is a difficult thing, but think how far we have come from the days of being a single-celled organism. Being an explorer is innate within all of us. We wouldn't be here now if it wasn't for exploration. So if we can admit for one single moment that we are explorers, then there is a chance. The second stage, so we all hopefully have admitted we're explorers. Next, we need to define what exploration is. Now, exploration, I believe, is defined by three quite simple things. It's defined by discovery of new knowledge. It's the frontiers. We need to go beyond into those frontiers and discover that new knowledge. Secondly, it's about communication. It's communicating what it is that we have discovered to a wider audience. And thirdly, we need to have impact with the knowledge that we've discovered and how we've communicated it. We need to decide what can we do with all this knowledge. So we have admitted we're explorers, and hopefully we know what exploration is now, but we've got to get to the spirit, to the soul of what exploration is. And I think it's defined by this man. The guy on your left, you can't really see his face, but that is Roy Chapman Andrews, an American paleontologist at the turn of the 20th century. He was one of the guys who gave the inspiration for the other chap you can see, Indiana Jones. And he famously said that adventures are the mark of incompetence. And Indiana Jones certainly carried that mantle with him. And exploration is, unfortunately, defined by incompetence, because the more mistakes you make, the greater the adventure. And I'm going to come back to this idea of making mistakes, because it is fundamental to our progression, unfortunately. So we'll come back to that in a little bit. But the most important thing of all parts of exploration is that it is, of course, a physical journey. We have to get started on this. We need to journey mentally, physically, spiritually into the unknown, into these frontier lands. And that only starts by actually taking the first step. Now, I started when I was a young boy. Age about 4 or 5, I heard about this thing called gravity. Didn't really understand it. Wasn't a particularly intelligent child. So I thought, I really need to try and understand this a little bit better. So I asked around and spoke to a few friends, and they pointed me to Lao Tzu. I had a Chinese friend at the time, and he said these words famously: "A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." Now, unfortunately, I read it as a single brick. As I said, I wasn't a particularly clever student. So I decided, well, I need to work this gravity thing out. So I climbed up a tree with a brick and jumped out of that tree and landed on the ground. The next thing I knew, I woke up in hospital with a gash in my head, blood coming out, my mother sitting by me, worried, senseless. And she said, "Look, Oliver, you can make mistakes. It's all fine. We all do make mistakes. But you need to be a little bit more intelligent about it. Newton didn't use a brick. He used an apple." So I took this on and thought, right, okay, well, and this is fundamental to our exploration, is that we do need to be intelligent about our journeys. And in that capacity, I've looked towards the importance of a guru. Now, we all have gurus in all walks of life. And for me, my guru is this man, Christopher Columbus. Now, the guru can be there for two reasons: for inspiration and for perspective. For inspiration, here was a man who went out in search of India. and he found the New World. It was one of the greatest mistakes ever made in the history of exploration, but he's lauded still as being one of the greatest explorers in history. So I thought, yeah, we can take a little bit of inspiration from that man, and none of us would be sitting here today if it wasn't for this great man, Christopher Columbus. Unfortunately, the second part of it is perspective, because there is the other side to what he did. He brought soldiers with him and disease, and he was responsible for the deaths of tens, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. And unfortunately, that is a part of exploration which continues to this day. It's exploration motivated by exploitation. And if there is ever a need at the moment for society, I believe that it is to have that perspective and to realize that exploration should not be governed by exploitation. It should be governed by a greater good for humanity. And if we can understand that, then perhaps we can journey into these unknown worlds with the right sort of motivation. The next thing is obviously the frontier. We all have frontiers in our lives, and it's our relationship to that, to the knowledge that we know and the things that we don't know. So imagine a line in front of you and thinking, well, for explorers, we need to journey into these unknown lands. We need to cross these great frontiers. So I took this idea rather literally a few years ago. I thought, right, we have apparently charted most of the surface of the world, but there are still a few little corners that we haven't actually found. And there was this place in the middle of New Guinea where I found a map, and all the map said was relief data incomplete. So I thought, okay, this is a frontier, I can head there. And I knew one thing, that it was inhabited by a tribe called the Kombai tribe, who live in tree houses like this one. The other thing I knew was that they were still apparently practicing cannibals. They were still eating people. And here's a little video about what happened when I ventured in there.
I'm kind of wary because we don't know who owns which stretch of the river. But the tranquility is amazing. Already it's the very opposite of my life back in the West. No traffic noise, no crowds, nothing. Just us and the jungle.
We're grounded because Mark is a fat bastard.
Ollie, your belly.
I've no idea what's going on, but there's this guy here with a bow and arrow pointing at us.
Before we get a chance to even talk to this guy, he's vanished. Neither Bob nor our head porters were expecting to meet any Kombai quite so soon.
We crossed a territory line there, this river.
Clearly, we need to find out what we did wrong.
Well, you didn't see the translation there, but what he was actually saying was if we go one step further, they're going to all come out and kill us and eat us. So that was a slight worry, but I'll freely admit I was terrified, not least of a man like this one, who became my adopted brother, standing there with wearing nothing more than a hollowed-out vegetable firing arrows over my head. If he wanted to shoot us, he could have done. But what I did learn was that our frontiers are defined by fear. We are terrified of going into those unknown areas, those unknown regions, and that is frustrating in many ways our progression. There are also people who want to actively stop us progressing. That's another story. But I'm going to talk about fear in a little bit. So my next great step for all becoming explorers is to go tribal. I ended up living with this tribe for 4 months and was adopted into the tribe. And this man became my adopted father, Gunari, one of the 3 warlords. So I asked him the first obvious question, why hasn't anyone come here? And he said, well, because we eat people. And I thought, okay, interesting. So I asked the next obvious question, have you eaten anyone? And he said, yes, I have. And I thought, all right, well, the next obvious question is how many? And he started counting up, and in Kombai you can only count to 23, because you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and up to your head 23. After that, it's a lot. And he thought for a moment and counted up and said, I've eaten a lot of people. So he then shared with me some recipes of how to cook people, which is something obviously we don't need. But my point, I think, hopefully, is that indigenous knowledge and indigenous wisdom is fundamentally important. People have different perspectives all over the world. We need humility to be able to understand and to work with different people, different cultures around the world. But also, let's just think for a moment about the indigenous people on this planet. There are over 300 million of them. They represent anything from 60 to 85% of human diversity, and they are the community of people who are more at risk than anyone else on the planet. And they represent some of the most important knowledge left on our planet, which might come as a bit of a surprise, but they do represent 200,000 years of development from when we hope modern humans arrived on our planet to now. And there is still great knowledge in there. Our forests, where these people live, the forests of the world, are the pharmacies of our planet. A quarter of all the medicines on our planet came and come from the forests. It be morphine, aspirin, vimblastin or Taxol. These things come from our forests that we are destroying. And we don't know what other medicines we may find, but we do know that we are destroying them. So we do need to respect the indigenous peoples and do so much more to protect them, because they are the most at-risk people on our planet. Anyway, that was a bit of a sidetrack. I want to go back to mistakes. Mistakes are fundamentally important to all exploration, and I learned this through the first expedition I led just out of university across the Gobi Desert and the Mongolian steppe, where it was a Royal Geographical Society expedition to chart this great communication highway that linked Genghis Khan's capital city in central Mongolia to Yuanshandou, Xanadu in northern China. And it was a great historical and cultural expedition. The problem was I failed to look into the logistics of actually how you cross a desert, and everything went wrong. We had our horses, some of our horses stolen at the beginning. We were held hostage by some bandits. As we entered the Gobi Desert, we ended up realizing we were going to have to walk across the Gobi Desert rather than ride camels, which was a 1,500-mile walk we weren't expecting. We ran out of food and water in the desert. We ended up being arrested by the Mongolian military, who thought we were spies, which wasn't a good day at the office. But what I realized then was that mistakes are fundamentally important to our journeys of exploration, and breaking down those frontiers, we all have to overcome those mistakes. And as I was, at one point, I'd actually left the rest of my team, and I was walking 150 miles alone through the Gobi without food and water, because I'd managed to lose them. And I remembered what this man said, Thomas Edison, because he found 10,000 ways that a light bulb didn't work before he found one that did. And he famously said that our great weakness lies in giving up. The most certain way to succeed is always to try just one more time. And it was down to him, really, that I kept on walking each step of the way to cross the Gobi Desert and survive. In all walks of life, this is step 9, it's managing the risk. And whether it's in business, whether it's in daily life, whether it's with children, we all have to manage those risks. And I realized that to my peril in Yemen. A couple of years ago, I went to film in this place, Marib, which is a well-known Al-Qaeda gun market. And I was filming, and I went along to from one shop to the next, and there you could buy everything from AK-47s to pistols to grenades to RPGs, the usual kind of stuff. And most people were happy with me filming, except one chap. I brought up my camera, he pulled up a gun. In a gun market, one guy pulls a gun, everyone pulls a gun. So I was frozen in absolute fear. I'll freely admit. And there are always 3 things that happen. You have 3 choices when you're in fear. You can either fight, you can flee, or you can freeze. Now, if I had fought, I would have got shot. If I had fled, I would have got shot. Luckily, I froze, and the 10 Yemeni soldiers I brought with me for security managed to negotiate a peaceful solution out of it. But on the way back, having polished off half a bottle of whiskey, trying to regain my composure after that ordeal, I started to think a little bit about what fear is. And fear is purely a perception. It's related to control. The more in control we are, the less fear we have. The less fear we have, the less control we have, the more fearful we feel. So it's really just a question of perception. We need to overcome that perception to be able to think first instead of fear first when we are in these difficult situations. And sometimes things do go wrong, and so we all need mistakes. And so I always turn to this particular chap, far cleverer than me, Einstein, because he made one of the greatest mistakes, this one, which is that the universe, he claimed, was not expanding. So he came up with this great equation, and he proved himself wrong. But he said that anyone who has never made a mistake has never tried anything new. And I think that that is what exploration he defines in many ways the wonders of exploration, and that we do have to make mistakes if we want to progress. Now, this is all talk, and I just want to give a quick reality check, because exploration is defined by action. And this is something I'm most proud of. It's called Digital Explorer. We bring the world to the classroom. And what we do is we work with other explorers around the world. And we went out to talk to young people, and we want to engage them in global issues, things which are really affecting them. And we asked them, are you engaged in global issues? And they said, no. And I said, well, why not? And they said, well, the teaching resources are terrible, and we don't like the people teaching us. And I went, okay, that's a classic young person's attitude towards these things. So we said, well, what can we do? And they said, well, we want to engage with the world. We know the technology is out there. Give us the technology you use when you're going reporting on the front lines. So we did. And we do. We give young people equipment. We give them satellite phones. We give them video cameras. We give them computers. And we send them off into the front lines of our changing world so they can experience what is going on. And they can report back to other young people about what is going on. It is peer-to-peer education. And it's, in the last 5 years, we went from nothing to now being in 2/3 of all schools in the UK. We take a small little community of people, and a journey for 10 people can now become a journey of learning for millions in the UK. It's all online. If anyone in the States wants to go online and engage with this, or maybe we can send kids out from the States to do this, then it is something which I hope we will be able to do more of. I just want to leave you with 2 particular quotes about what exploration really means for me. So hopefully you can carry them on your journeys of exploration. Because as I said at the beginning, exploration is the basis of all our progression. We all need to be explorers because we all need to get out of the mess that we're in right now. And there are 2 key people here who I just want to share with you what they said. There's Pablo Picasso. He went to the Lascaux Caves in the Pyrenees, some of the oldest forms of art ever created. And he said, there is nothing new under the sun. There is nothing new under the sun. Here's a man who was credited with creating new artistic forms, a new form of expression. And yet he realizes that there is nothing new under the sun. It's all innate within us. We have the possibilities to change the future. It's a choice that we all have to make. And secondly, I want to leave you with the words of Marcel Proust, who said, the true voyage of discovery is not seeking new lands, but it's having fresh eyes. And each and every one of you have the opportunity to make a difference on this planet. We are all empowered. We all have that choice. We are very privileged all to be sitting here making decisions about how we're going to affect the future. And I implore you all to have fresh eyes and to find and try and seek and do more to find solutions to the mess we're in. Thank you.